right, welcome back everybody to Gearwire.com. I'm Rob Warmowski, and I'm here at the Chicago Guitar Show, which strangely enough is held in the DuPage County Convention Center. It's kind of weird. I'm here with John Brinkman, who is one of the original promoters of the Guitar Show. John, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
So, John, tell us a little bit about the history of the Guitar Show. What made you create this show?
Well, this is an extension of the one we do in Texas. We created the shows down there in 1978 and started having guitar shows before anyone else ever thought of the idea, with one exception. You had the very first one here in Chicago.
And what year was that?
1976-77. It was downtown in Beach's Music Store.
Huh. Wow.
And I came up, looked at that. It was what we call a closed show. They only had 4 or 5 dealers, and they were the same dealers. No one else could come in and set up, but everybody could come in and buy. So we just took the idea, extended a little bit further, put it into a larger venue, and invited all kinds of dealers to come in.
So let me ask you this: before '76 or so, or before the shows began, how did vintage guitar prices develop? How did people know what they had?
Mostly car trunking.
Oh, car trunking, meaning just go, well, tell me a little bit.
They
Tell
go
me
to a
about
flea market with buy and sell and trade instruments out of the trunk of their car. And so you developed somewhat of a market, nothing national, just kind of hit and miss.
And if you, you would go buying guitars like that too, as well as selling them?
Oh yes, you would go out and buy them, and back in those days, it didn't take anything to buy them.
And did anybody publish prices, or
No,
did you?
there were no published prices. The first published list that I was aware of was probably George Gruen and Traders out of New Jersey.
About what year?
I'm going to say early 80, 78, 80, 82, somewhere's right in there.
That's a lot of decades for an object to go without a official appraising being available.
It didn't exist as a market. It was not a viable market.
Are you aware of the appraisal market for classical instruments, and is that any different from guitars?
In the main, no. Classical instruments are considered also in our guitar show business, but they are more elite, for lack of a better term. That makes it easier because there's fewer. There are probably the same number of quasi-experts that think they know what's going on with it, but it's just kind of a little bit different market, both in price and in size.
A market expert such as yourself has got to know.
Careful.
A market expert like you've got to know something where the deals are. If someone's just getting into guitar collecting as an investment today, where would you suggest they take a look?
Well, number one, I would suggest they educate themselves first. Go out and buy all the trade magazines you can buy featuring pricing. Attend at least a couple, 3 shows. It won't be very long that you'll see what sells and what doesn't sell. And you'll be able to determine kind of what you like. And then when you decide that, you can get into collecting and buying and selling from that standpoint. Now, in the last 3 years, there's a whole other entity evolved, and that is one of collecting or investing in guitars rather than buying them for your own collection. And that's kind of a cold, hard, can I make money? How much do I make? And there's no feeling for the instruments.
I've read several stories recently about how guitars outperform some stocks, and that some New York investors have looked at guitars, buying in bulk guitars as part of their portfolio. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I get on the average at least 2 calls a month from investors someplace across the country that want to buy guitars. And of course they're buying principally the Fender, Gibson, Martin, Gretsch, National. And they will, one guy in the last week called me and said, I just broke $1 million out of my savings and I want to put it in instruments. What have you got?
And you get 2 calls like that a month? Wow.
But the kind of instruments you have, it's really not difficult to sell. The difficulty is in finding them.
What's the most unusual spot, or recently, the most unusual spot you found an absolute treasure in?
Find them mostly in attics, garages, garage sales. I bought a Martin OM18 1933 out of a garage sale here about a month ago, and that's a $25,000 guitar.
So what do you do when you see when you see the person who's just putting on the garage sale and they've got the price tag at they're asking $50 for a $25,000 guitar? What do? You give them a couple hundred?
What I generally do is try and establish some kind of a price that I think they would not fall over.
Right.
And you run a problem occasionally if you have that guitar and you don't know what it's worth, and I say, look, I'll give you $5,000 for it. All at once, you go blank. I mean, you just say, whoa, wait a minute, if he's going to pay that, what is it worth?
Right. You don't want to muddy the water.
So I guess the most unusual case of that, I had a lady call one October and say, I've got a guitar to sell, I want to buy birdseed for my birds. So I said, okay, fine, do you know anything about it? She said, well, it's got Martin written on the headstock, or the top of the guitar. She didn't call it a headstock. So I said, okay, I'll come out. And I took some money and went out, and it was an older Martin, one with the vertical name in the headstock. And I said, well, now, what do you want? And she said, well, I figured it's going to take me $200 to feed my birds all winter. So she said, I'll sell it for $250. Now, the guitar, I don't remember exactly what it was worth, but it was worth several thousand. So I laid $2,000 on the table, and I said, take whatever you want. It doesn't make any difference to me. She took $500.
Those are some fat birds.
They stayed fat.
John Brinkman from the Chicago Guitar Show. I just wanted to thank you so much for speaking with us at Gearwire.com.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Welcome anytime.
I think we're coming back.